book and wisdom fills the page. From the UK to the land of maple trees, John and Mike bring clarity with ease. We're building meetings, webinars with might, helping you shine your message, taking flight. Whether you're new or you've done this before, Lord Zoom Live will help you do much more. We're building meetings, webinars with might, helping you shine your message, taking flight. Whether you're new or you've done this before, Lord Zoom Live will help you do much more. Thank you for joining us, we're glad you're here. Together we grow, it's loud and clear. On Zoom we connect, we learn, we grow. Welcome my friend, enjoy the show.
Hello. How are we then? I hope it's not too clickbaity, but it's the question we all had. Is Zoom going 4K? Spoiler alert. No, it's not going 4K, but it is moving in a 4K direction. I think that's fair to say. I've locked the door. I double lock the door in case Andy decides to come in and tell me I'm wrong about something. But I'm hoping he did give a really good explanation, and I'm really hoping that we've got our notes right here. So welcome to this Lord Zoom Live, and hopefully I will be on the right track. If my story gets a bit derailed, then Mike's here as well, and Mike can make sure that I'm pulled back in the right direction and I find the right point. That's the end of my train analogies. 3 is enough for one session. So welcome to you, Mike. Great to have you here. And you've seen my notes and you haven't cried yet, so I'm hoping that we've got a good show here.
True. I have seen the notes. I was there to witness it live, and let's talk about it.
Okay. I have the most simple slide deck ever in existence for you today. And really, all I want to say is, first issue, is Zoom going to 4K? And the answer is no. But we do have the ability to ingest, and this is where things get a little bit dodgy, to ingest 1080p at 60 frames a second. This is not going to be available to everybody. It is an upgrade. It is an update. It is something you have to purchase to use. And the way it was sold to me, I'm going to buy the upgrade. I'm going to run it on my machine, and I'm going to run it in my meeting, on my webinar, and I will allow, or it will allow me to connect a 60 frame per second 1080p feed from my production equipment, whether it be a camera, through a card, or whatever. No, no, no. No, no, no. Plugging one of those little dinky little cameras in and connecting it with a USB is not going to give you proper 60 frames a second. We're talking about kosher, standard production type equipment. Please don't think that some little diddy little camera is going to, they pretend to, but they really can't. It's just not possible. It's just, they'll argue it, but it's really not on the cards. We're talking about proper production studio equipment here, please. Don't think that you can just take an upgrade, get one of these little Diddy cameras and off Amazon and other places are available, of course, but to get that, it's got to be proper production equipment. This is what this is about. This is about moving the Zoom world up a level so that the media world can connect to it in quality. But it does mean that I can ingest a much more smooth experience on a much better camera. I'm going to get better color depth. I'm going to get better animation. I'm going to just get a more fluid piece of content. And that's not just me saying that. Andy also said it as well. Now we're talking about something which he called high bandwidth mode. And this is where I want to warn you. If you are running this, then you are making a sort of commitment that you're going to be using more bandwidth. And you'll need to have that in your head when you're processing things. So you could have double the amount of bandwidth going up, for instance. So you could be not just doing 10 meg, but doing 20. What I'm not so clear on is how that fantastic new 60 frames a second that you produce gets taken after it gets the cloud. But we've got something about the cloud which may give you a clue. But I'm not saying, because I haven't heard it said, and I'm not certain, and I'm really going to be careful here. I'm not saying that everybody in your organization who's on the webinar with you is suddenly going to get 60 frames a second coming down from the cloud. That wasn't clearly said, and I'm on the fence about what that's going to be quality-wise. And I'm going to make a guess what I know about technicals, and Mike's going to know this better than I am, but what I know about technicals, I think it's going to open the door to better quality. But I don't think just the fact that I've got a camera that ingests at 60 frames a second and it goes up to the cloud, that everything else is suddenly going to come to this high level. I don't think that's where we are just yet. What do you think, Mike?
It will depend on the configuration in the workplace app of the person, of the participant or panelist, depending on if you're using meeting or webinar plus. It will depend on the back end. So Zoom's back end, understanding that the host has the license, which will be very important, just because you have the license to be able to do this, and you're a participant, not a host, does not mean that the meeting, webinar, or webinar plus will automatically have such capabilities. So the license is based on the host of the meeting. So I don't know, John, if you're going to get to that, but I beat you to that one. I'm sorry. But that is the very, very important part. And it's always been Zoom's mentality and Zoom's structure that the host licensing affects. So what features that the host license has is the features that the meeting, webinar, and webinar plus actually can take advantage of.
Yeah.
Good, John?
Yeah, I'm along with you on that. I don't see this, although there were some people who said, wow, I want that, get it. But I don't see this as something which is just to be used in a webinar like we're using now. This is a move towards integrating higher quality Zoom with an event, a physical production, etc. Because the other thing which I think gives us an example of this is there is a 4K, sort of 4K issue, because you can now, when you have this enhanced media add-on, I might have a flashier name by the time we get there, but that's what we're calling it at the moment. The ability to bring down more quality feeds. So you could, as Andy said, you could bring in 4 1080p feeds from the users that are there. So that is effectively building you a 4K worth of content. But it does mean that you could have a gallery with a higher quality of users. And the other thing he said about that was that we've all noticed that the elephant in the room used to be somebody with a low spec phone, which couldn't do better than 720 or even worse. And we used to find that it would drag the meeting down because Zoom gave one version of the content for everybody and had to give in, so to speak, to the lowest common denominator. Now, with this enhanced system and the way Zoom is working now, that problem is starting to go away. Firstly, because a lot of phones are actually getting more powerful and can produce content and process content at that higher level. But also, Andy was talking about a ladder of options, and there could be in this new version more ladder of options to allow people to have a quality feed for most people. And if somebody can't take that quality feed, there's a fallback feed which they can get, but it doesn't bring everybody else down. It comes out as two separate feeds. Did I explain that well, or did I explain that adequately, Mike?
Yes, yes. It from a technical point of view for our audience, John went at the same level that Andy was explaining it to us this previous week. So just to take into consideration that when John means ladders, and I'll let John explain the ladders a little more so that we can get a little more granular what John was meaning by each ladder. But when it comes to you being able to even handle the high bandwidth, aka 1080p 60, your equipment has to have, as John was saying, going back quickly to the camera, you have to make sure that your camera natively can handle output of 1080p 60. And this is where John is correct about the fact that, if your sensor in your camera, and I said that slowly, so let me say that again, your sensor in your camera can be 4K and can be 4K 60. But are you truly getting, as John mentioned, 4K 60 into your PC, Mac, insert here? This is very, very important. In the broadcast world, you cannot fake that. You're either upscaling or downscaling. So if the camera says that it is a 4K camera, it very well could be only giving you anywhere from 720p to 1080p, even though it's a 4K sensor within the camera. That could potentially actually get you 4K 60, but now the camera might be able to do it, but your PC or Mac or insert here might not be able to handle that as well. So there are a lot of factors that do come into play for you to be able to make sure that you get 1080p 60. Because right now, based on the regular license, the maximum is 1080p 30. Over to you, Johnny, to give a little more details about the ladders that you were talking about.
Okay. Not only is the camera going to have the performance for this, but your capture device is also going to have the performance. If you are generating a 1080p 60 or even a 4K signal, your adapter that you're plugging that camera into before it then goes into the computer, and this is why USB is a bottleneck of problems, but if you have a proper capture device and it can process that 4K down to 1080 60, which of course would mean you'd have to produce 4K 60 to get there. So you're not going to do that. You're going to produce 1080 60, but you could produce 4K and bring 4K into the Zoom world. But it's not going to go far. We're talking about 1080 60 here. And if this sounds confusing, then it is confusing. But Zoom has this, as I heard it described, a ladder of standards for the video, starting probably at 360, although actually I've seen somebody go at 180. But there's a ladder of standards, and usually in the Zoom world, we expected that that ladder would only allow people to climb to the lowest common denominator of everybody in the call. So you could have gone from to 720. You may have a license with Zoom which allows you to go to 1080, so you go up to 1080. And then somebody comes along with a device of a lower spec, and your ladder, you all go back down the ladder together to the lower spec. But we've noted that this seems not to be working, and I think Zoom have been working hard in the background so that you can have that higher spec that you expect for most people, and then you can have an exception for a lower level for other people who aren't able to receive. Maybe they're on a mobile device and they can't receive that. But I don't see 1080 60 going to the normal users. This is just the person that has the license. It's just for them to process and make content better. The whole idea of being able to bring down 4 people at 1080p, which effectively gives you a 4K window, but those 4 people, the idea of that is you can then plug in a 4K device. So maybe oh gosh, I know there's lots of them. There are thousands, tens of thousands of people who are using Zoom Rooms, and they've had a 4K TV on the wall for ages. And Zoom's never given it a proper 4K signal because Zoom has been totally in a 1080p world. That is the one exception which Andy gave us, where Zoom may be able to, I say may be able to because it obviously is going to depend on lots of things, but it's got the ability now, the building in the ability that it could send a 4K signal to that 4K TV. And that could be 4 1080p signals made out of that. So Zoom is trying to up the standard of what comes in, and it's going to try to up the standard of what comes out. And I think this is going to be a gradual process as they get the systems working. And we'll talk about some of the systems which will make that easier. But there's one elephant in the room we've forgotten to mention. Well, we haven't because it's number 6 on my list here. Nothing changes on the recording front. Zoom is not going to record any higher quality than it does now. There is no special option for a higher version of recording. So if you have high quality cameras and you want to ingest that high quality content, you're going to have to do it before you give the signal to Zoom, not after. Zoom will not improve your recordings inside Zoom at this point. And I can see why it wouldn't want to, because it's a lot of bandwidth. So that's not going to happen. So let's think about the high bandwidth mode concept. This is the whole idea is Zoom is moving its standards up. It's going up the ladder, offering higher speeds, higher quality with this 1080 60 frames a second. He's calling it high bandwidth mode. It's not going to give you a 4K feed. It can give you a 4K gallery. It is taking higher quality content from you and sending it up, but it's not going to then disseminate that. As far as I can see, it's not going to disseminate that to the other users. However, there is a reason why we want to go to that next level. And that's because, like Production Studio, Zoom ISO is going up into the cloud as well. So rather than having Zoom ISO running on a PC or a Mac, it is now, of course, tied down to a Mac for you, and you do all the processing locally, and then you've got all the delays and all the processing problems of moving that around. Zoom ISO is going up into the cloud. So there'll be a cloud version of Zoom ISO, which will therefore allow it to stretch its legs, stretch its arms. It'll be able to really geek out in the cloud because it's now got the limitation of whatever you put it on thrown away. It's now in its own little world. I'm trying not to use the technical terms here. It's in its own little world, and it's got beefier muscles, and it can process at a higher level. we haven't got all the details. Don't need all the details. We can now imagine that you are producing higher quality 1080p 60 frames per second content in your machine, and that content is now going up into the cloud. Now it's up in the cloud. The options for moving that data around at a higher level of quality, not 4K yet, but the ability to run higher quality bandwidth data from the different video signals into the cloud means that Zoom can now turn around to the broadcast world and say, hey guys, we can now play at your level. You want 1080p, 60 frames a second? We got it. You want 4K? It's on the way. Some of it may even work already. We don't know. We haven't seen that bit, but they can now deliver content and ingest content and work with content at a much higher level of quality. And this brings Zoom into that big game of the broadcast world and the networking world. And everybody is frankly moving stuff up now to the cloud, because the cloud is a much more beefy, much more controllable environment than PCs running around or even laptops overheating in trucks and things like that. So it was described, and I will quote because I've got it down here, Zoom ISO Cloud is a cloud-native containerized version of Zoom ISO that joins Zoom meetings and then breaks them into clean individual participants' ISO feeds inside a cloud production platform, so you can route, switch, and scale many meeting stages. Notice he says meeting, not webinars, without spinning up piles of desktops or VM instances. So Zoom has got a very big flag and it just banged it into the ground and saying, guys, we are here, I think, Mike.
They are here, yes. Right now, again, there's been the limitation of the 1080p 30. A lot of the broadcasters in the US and Canada are anywhere from 720p to 1080i. Yes, I said the word I, not P. And right now, there is the potential, depending on the client of Zooms, aka sports, they would like more frame rate, please, please, please. And more pixels, again, please, please, please. So this is where Zoom has gone, okay, NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, and said, okay, you want to be able to have that remote referee, judge, insert here, depending on your sport and what you call those people that are back at the infamous main office making the final ruling on the play. You might have heard that situation in American football, or you might have heard FIFA you'll have a referee on the ground when you're watching FIFA that will go up to a monitor and stick his head in the monitor because he wants to see that replay. This is what we're talking about. So the more pixels they can show, the more quality they can get. And heaven forbid it be using Zoom instead of the expensive way that they can do it. And Zoom ISO Cloud that John mentioned now allows them to have their own Zoom ISO Cloud instances of Zoom. Could be multiple meetings, could be one meeting that has multiple people, or in this case, multiple venues coming into a Zoom ISO Cloud, or multiple cameras from one venue coming into Zoom ISO Cloud, now that they can actually go to live and switch live. So there are a lot of capabilities that this will bring to the Zoom universe and also the broadcast universe. This is why the broadcast universe is getting very hyped up. They've already been hyped up on Zoom, but now this is just going to take it to that next level, because now Zoom is coming closer to them than they've been in the past. They haven't been bad, but the broadcast industry wanted them to be better. And thus, we don't want 30 frames, we want 60. Please, please, please. Oh, and by the way, please 4K, because we are officially recording everything in 4K and would like to send things back in 4K, but we'll wait for now.
I saw a review, documentary, whatever you want to call it, on YouTube last week about the Olympics, which is currently being held. Hasn't finished yet. No, it hasn't finished yet. Currently being held in Europe. But NBC was showing off its studios and its control centers based in the States, and they are bringing all the content over, and then they are processing it all in the States, and then most of it then goes into their news services. So they are, in a way, moving gradually towards Zoom as well. There's a lot of networking, internet-related connections from Italy to the States so they can get their shows. The days of all the big trucks and everybody piling into the venue and then one poor little satellite feed trying to send the signal back to everybody is gone. And now you still have trucks there. You still need all the infrastructure to connect all the cameras and all the audio feeds and bring them all through to somewhere. But much of the processing can be now done through the internet at the other end. And they've even got some of the audio desks they were showing off where the audio desk effectively exists at both ends. So somebody at one end can control what's happening at the other end and vice versa. So this is a really exciting world. And this is where I have to quote the letters, which you're going to hear about more and more, because it's the new protocol that they're all pushing around called MXL, Media Exchange Layer, which is and I quote, because I wouldn't want to get it wrong, is a open, high-performance media interconnect that lets production apps and services exchange live video, audio, and timing data directly, often via shared buffers, enabling low latency, scalable, interoperable workflows across cloud or on-prem clusters. For those that speak in English, they got some really fat pipe they can chuck data down to make it all work. Between different vendors, they have a common standard. Doesn't mean all the other standards that we've had already, like NDI, have disappeared. They're all still there, but this is another new, bigger project to share data between people. This is the API equivalent for the video industry. And it's bigger processing on a bigger scale. And that's why Zoom wants to be up in the cloud, so it can join in the conversation at that level. And Mike, of course, says, oh no, another standard to support, but this is what happens.
This is what happens in our involving industry called broadcast world / streaming world / audio video lighting world / welcome to our world. And I was actually speaking with someone on Friday after John left the other show that John and I are on Fridays. And I said to him, I said, you realize you're a broadcaster? He said, no, I'm not. I'm just a guy that makes YouTube videos. And it is one of our YouTube friends. And I'm like, you realize that you're broadcasting on YouTube. There's no difference between broadcasting on YouTube than broadcasting on the TV channel. And he went, ding. And sure enough, he said to me, he says, yeah, Mike, I didn't want to believe ChatGPT when ChatGPT told me that I'm a broadcaster. And I'm like, I'll ask Mike. And I said, guess what? You're a broadcaster. You're not. You shouldn't think any differently, especially if you're going to the levels of, as we're talking today about what Andy spoke to us late last week about, high bandwidth mode. John, is that what we're calling it right now? High bandwidth mode. If you need high bandwidth mode for your clients, for yourself, you can never, ever say ever again that you're not a broadcaster. How's that, John?
I think we are all broadcasters. The new statement, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And we should be treating all of our meetings, all of our webinars, and those webinar plus ones to make sure that we are the best that we should be, quality-wise, audio, video, lighting. And of course, check John and I out when we go into more depth on our other shows when it comes to that. But today, high bandwidth mode, broadcasters happy? Yes. Do they know what to do with it yet? They're thinking about it.
I love an industry which still thinks that you can only tell somebody something happens when you have a show. The computer industry have given up on that. We just announce stuff whenever we like, and it's out there, and then we get some YouTubers to talk about it. But the production shows seem to think that they still at the moment want to announce things at a event of some sort. And I think this means that some of them are holding back stuff and some of them are pre-announcing stuff when it doesn't really work yet because they need to announce it at a particular show. And that's fine. That's the way the life is, then that is fine. But of course, we're telling you about this, and I'm not going to tell you that it's in your machine now. I can tell you that certain things have already been done in the background to prepare, but you may be able to bully your account rep and he may pretend to give you an upgrade early. Yeah, a lot of arm twisting needed. But it should be on general release Marchish. So I would expect we'll start using it April, because this is one of these updates that I'm not going to rely on turning up on the day. No way. This is a big deal, and there's a lot of things that need to fall into place. And unlike a lot of the other clever things that Andy gets up to, this is a multidisciplinary problem. Lots of parts of Zoom have to get their acts together and take part in this to make the move to this higher standard. So it's not going to be easy. So that very conveniently takes me on to the world of developers. Now, if you're a Zoom developer, and I should change hats really, shouldn't I? I should put my developer's hat on. If you are a Zoom developer, how does this affect you? Well, firstly, Andy claims, I say claims because I can't find the documentation for it, Andy's smuggled in a new switch to help you get to 1080p. I assume he means 1080p at 60 frames a second, because we all know we can get to 1080p already. But there has been an update of code in the developers kits, so the SDKs should be able to catch up with this whole world. And that means as developers, we've now got to start thinking about, can my hardware do this? Because I think the limiting is going to be much more hardware is on the software when we get to all the people who love doing fun things with the video SDK and mobile phones. But it does mean that in this world of 1080p, you've got more pixels, more chances to do pretty graphics, something which I'll be doing because then I'll have prettier overlays. But you're going to have to be aware of the performance issues on your devices. You're going to have to be very careful of performance issues on the network that they be on. I mean, even if it's a fantastic mobile phone, if the network can't support the higher bandwidth, what are you going to do? There won't be any 4K cameras on your mobiles, but there will be a good quality 1080p canvas. So I think what I'm trying to say to you is, developers, bear in mind this is coming. Get excited. Start planning all your fantastic worlds that you're going to build from this. But it doesn't mean that it's going to happen tomorrow, and it doesn't mean that you're going to get it working tomorrow, and it doesn't mean that you're really going to be impressed with everything. It's just to stick things, and I'm trying to find it on my slides, and I've got it on my slides, so I'm going to check my notes. He was talking about OSR rendering, which is a off-screen rendering system, and he also mentioned the Chromium embedded framework stack. So I think there are some more powerful things within the Chromium browser into which we are working that will allow us to up our game graphics wise and improve the graphics. So the app's SDK should have been updated. The user toggle 720 to 1080, well, we can already do that to a degree, but 1080 is now there. It's in the SDK, should have been in the SDK since December. And therefore, there's the option to improve the graphics that you're using inside your app. Of course, the other apps that are going to be interested in all of this are the guys that are building the big stuff that's going to connect via MXL into Zoom. But I'm interested to see what Zoom Rooms production workflow will look like now. Whether we'll have something a bit more powerful within the Zoom Rooms world. There was a product there. How it's going to be effective when Zoom ISO comes along, I don't know, but I've got a Zoom Room Mac upstairs, and I'm going to be looking forward to sending a 4K signal to my 4K TV at last, and we will see what it does. But this is a move to the future, and I like it. It was always going to be hard for Zoom to do. When you built tens, hundreds, millions of people on a certain video standard, and then you think, how do I go to the next level? Because you can't just switch everybody on to 4K. It's just impossible. Everybody would be complaining their computers didn't work properly. You would go to 4 times the resolution and more than 4 times the bandwidth in a lot of cases. It would just be a nightmare. But we now have a way that we can start building in this higher quality of video into the production world, which is where we really need it, let's face it. And then there can be some trickle down. After all, you guys probably don't even notice that most of you now are running 720 and you weren't running 720 before. And if you get a business account, you can switch up to 1080. When I run my webinars, I have the choice to run my webinars at 720 or 1080. So the quality standard is already building up, and I think it's a great way to start the new year with this slow but steady launch into the world of higher bandwidth, 60 frames a second. And I'm really looking forward to it. But I've got nothing else to say now apart from Mike. I'm sure you got better closing thoughts than I have.
Well, John, you did mention briefly bandwidth. So for your developers, they should actually understand the new bandwidth requirements. You want to go over those numbers quickly for everybody?
Well, the the top level bandwidth requirement, as far as I'm concerned, the thing that I remember is in my existing world, I want 10 megabits up and down. In this new world, I want 20 up and down. Now, that's quite a bit if you've got a, trying to think of a polite word, budget broadband service. If you're in a poor area, 20 megabits up and down is going to start to be a problem. 20 megabits up and down wirelessly is going to be a problem. So you're going to need some reliable quality. Okay, I've got 100 up and down here, but if I start mixing around and I start putting 2 or 3 licenses on my network, I'm thinking I can run them all at 1080, 60 frames a second because I've got some licenses to do it. I'm suddenly going to find that I'm pushing my luck. So bandwidth will be a big issue. And if you think those people who can't be heard properly because they've taken their iPad to the other end of their house away from their router and you can't hear them properly on the lowest of X, you can imagine what a disaster this could be if people try and just bandwidth up themselves just for the sheer hell of it because they want to look good and are still on a poor wireless network. This is something that it's gonna make a few people cry, I think.
Yeah, it's going to make the people that feel that networks just work because I plugged in and I should get the bandwidth. Now, John is, as you would say, as John said, he's 100, he's got 100 down and 100 up. In the world in US and Canada, more specifically, I'll leave John alone being in the UK right now because it's a little different over there. But when it comes to the systems in the US and Canada, for you to be synchronized internet speeds, not asynchronous, synchronized upload and download speeds, those in itself in the US and Canada are very expensive internet connections. So when it comes to, oh yeah, everybody says, oh, I've got 500 down. Fine. That covers your 20 down. And as long as you're not at a busy office that a lot of people are using the other 400 or 450, because you never really get 500 on a good day. Now, all of a sudden, okay, so now you're able to bring in, should you need to bring in the data. Now here comes the problem. Okay, what have you got as an upload speed? And if you check your latest ISP bill for the service that you're currently paying, you may or may not have 20 megabit up. But once again, are you sharing that 20 megabit with somebody else or some things else on the network? And if so, is that going to interfere? And the official answer to that is, and good old computer answers to that is, it depends. It depends on how you set up your network. And so we're not talking, I'm going to go to your favorite computer store or your favorite Amazon and buy the latest and greatest router that is in your home, that is great for gaming with. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about those type of routers anymore. Because we're talking about now business style routers, business style switches, and especially if you're going to be using Zoom ISO Cloud and or MXL, as John brought up, So if you're doing a containerized MXL deployment within your network, some have actually deployed their own network just for MXL or NDI or Dante. So they actually have their own physical, second physical, non-internet physical audio video network using the protocols. So again, when we're talking getting the data from Zoom down 20 megabit, fine. Where it becomes the problem now is the upload speed. And even in basic business packages, a lot of the basic business packages are still very little upload. If you've followed any of the YouTubers out there that are doing their best to make sure that they can upload as quickly as possible their YouTube video to YouTube so that it can be posted on YouTube in time while it's still relevant, the content that they made, they want the fastest internet connection that they can get. And some of them are paying hundreds, if not potentially thousands of dollars for their internet connection so that they can get that faster upload speed, because the download speed is not the problem. So bandwidth, John, will be definitely probably some of the growing pains that certain customers of Zoom that want to have that 1080p 60 high bandwidth may not realize that they don't even have enough high bandwidth themselves to handle it.
Yeah. And of course, if you're an event organizer, then your event venue is going to need to have that quality of bandwidth. I have one event that I run regularly with a friend of mine, and fortunately, we're on the university campus, and they've got a 2 gig, so we've got a 2000 meg connection backbone for the network. So at that venue, we'd have no problem in running a high bandwidth event because they've just got ridiculous backbone at that university. But there'll be a lot of venues out there who, in the UK, if you've got fiber, then you've got a chance to do 100 meg or faster like I have. But if you've still got the old copper based, which we have in the UK still, and I know a lot of other places in the world haven't gone to fiber completely, they're still using copper to push the data through. They are not going to find it easy to get the higher bandwidth. So a venue may not have it. So I'm putting a line in the sand here for you. If you are an event organizer or something like that, and you think, oh, this sounds really cool, all these high graphics and speeds and things that I can use, that'll make my events look much more interesting and beautiful for my clients. Yeah, possible, but you're going to have to check out the venues very carefully because you're now asking for twice as much as you did before. And you know what the story of broadband when you're sharing it is, and that is whatever you want, make sure you get double, because that's the only way you're going to give yourself some breathing space if somebody else decides to get on the network and do something while you're trying to run your event. So now you're going from 20 to 40. That doesn't mean this is not a bad thing. We are over the moon about this. We just know that there's a whole load of issues that this brings up, and they will need to be addressed by everybody. But it is a new world of speed and, more importantly, of quality. If you're a purist, you won't know this, but I promise you, if I showed you a 1080p and a 4K picture on your TV, you probably wouldn't notice too much about it, because frankly, most of you, when you're watching terrestrial TV, are watching 1080p anyhow. But if you improve the frame rate, that does make a much smoother and a much better difference to content. And I'm pretty sure that most people would see the difference if they looked at a 30 frames per second sports, especially when something's happening fast, sports event, and they looked at the 60 frames per second version of that sports event. I'm sure that a lot of people would notice the difference in the quality between the two. And that is a really exciting thing to have. So thank you, Zoom. Keep pushing those boundaries. Keep making it work. Mike and I just lapping up this. We're looking forward to making use of this fantastic world. I'm really happy, but I'm also really hungry.
Don't be too hungry, Johnny. We have to be careful. Don't eat all that bandwidth.
I'm hungry for bandwidth.
Yes. And Zoom is forcing you to make sure that, you have the bandwidth capabilities. So not only do you have to get the license, you might have to get a new internet connection.
Well, yeah.
And or a backup internet connection.
Yeah. I've got two at the moment. Maybe I should have a word and get my third one in, because I've got a unique opportunity where I am to have 3 different broadband suppliers. And I think fiber is coming from BT in the next few weeks. So I could have 3. And that'll be all I can eat bandwidth then. Lovely. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Comment wherever you see this. Love to have you. We have 3 regular shows now we've committed to after I fell apart yesterday. 3 regular shows. There will always be this flagship show on a Tuesday. We'll have a more webinar-based one on a Monday. And we have a production-related show on a Friday. And if that's not enough for you, don't worry, because I've got 20 other show ideas, which probably won't be every single week, but they will be interspersed during the month. And they'll all be on the hub as they are announced. Thank you, Mike, for your time. Thank you, Zoom, for your bandwidth. And thank you all for watching and listening.
Take care, everyone. See you next week.
Every week we open wide the virtual stage where ideas spark and wisdom fills the page. From the UK to the land of maple trees, John and Mike bring clarity with ease. We're building meetings, webinars with might, helping you shine your message, taking flight. Whether you're new or you've done this before, Lord Zoom Live will help you do much more. We're building meetings, webinars with might, helping you shine your message, taking flight. Whether you're new or you've done this before, Lord Zoom Live will help you do much more. Thank you for joining us, we're glad you're here. Together we grow, it's loud and clear. On Zoom we connect, we learn, we grow. Welcome my friend, enjoy the show. From big events to breakout rooms with flair, we've got the tools and we're ready to share. Guest experts drop in, bringing gold each time, with insights and tricks to help you climb. Can't make it live, we've got you still. On YouTube and LinkedIn, we're giving that thrill. So tune in later or catch us next round. Either way, your success is where we're bound. Thank you for joining us, we're glad you're here. Together we grow, it's loud and clear. On Zoom we connect, we learn, we glow. Welcome my friend, enjoy the show. And make it live, we've got you still. On YouTube and LinkedIn, we're giving that thrill. So tune in later or catch us next round. Either way, your success is where we're bound. Now take the spotlight, the stage is yours. Bring your message through virtual doors. Each week we gather, and now you know you're not alone, so let it flow. Thank you for joining us. Now go and shine. Share what you've learned. Your voice, your time. With Lord Zoom Live, your power will grow. It's time to build your own show.